Hey folks, I'm here with Dennie Mayhone and we're talking about elder law. Dennie, welcome. Thanks for being my guest.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the practice. What exactly do you guys do?
Well, we have a small practice. I have a small team, and I'm the only attorney in the firm. There's a lot of things we could do under the elder law banner, but only a few things we've chosen to do. So one is estate planning. And estate planning, as far as powers of attorney, wills, trusts, asset protection models. We do crisis Medicaid, and we do Medicaid pre-planning. So if someone is thinking about the nursing home, worried about the nursing home, or potentially looking to keep the kids from fighting, etc. We also do some VA benefits for certain members of the fraternity. And we also do a thing we call life care planning, which is a different approach to the elder law continuum, which is what happens if we can start with a person when they first notice they need some help, and we can take that holistic approach all the way through to the end of life. But it's basically serving anyone in those areas, not just seniors, not just the elderly. But our primary focus is on elder law.
So who exactly should come to see you? At what point, I would imagine that most of the time you're being seen by the children of the parent who might be getting older. Is that correct?
Well, it's a mixed bag. If the parent is already having some issues with dementia or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, for example, typically it's the children or a spouse who's coming to see us. But my youngest clients that we're actually doing planning for them are in their 20s because they have young children and they want to make sure if something happens to them, who's taking care of their children.
Got it. So you're thinking in advance.
Right. And then our oldest are, they may have been retired for 30 years already.
Well, in my case, for example, I'm thinking that if I had my parents that were still alive, I might be thinking of them and thinking, well, they better make sure they're protected. Now, is there a point at which I have to be careful of exceeding certain deadlines? For example, I know that there might be certain legalities that if I go past a certain age or something, I may not be eligible. Is that true?
Well, depending on the benefit program you're looking at, there are guidelines. But, for example, Medicaid has a 5-year look back. So what does that mean? Well, when you apply, they're going to look back 5 years at what you've done. And under certain programs, it means you can't qualify until you have a free 5 years. Under other programs, it just means there's a penalty associated with it, and that penalty is a period of time they're not going to pay. So it doesn't necessarily mean 5 years. So for example, for some of my nursing home clients, they're looking to apply for Medicaid to help offset the cost of nursing care. Sure. We intentionally create penalties, but I probably spend about 40% of my time undoing what they've done, thinking they were doing the right thing. The issue really comes down to what do you have, how do you have it, and what do you want to do with it?
Sounds to me like there are a lot of complexities. So when should I come in and see you? If I'm looking at this for myself, you mentioned that you may have clients in your 20s who have children. At what point should I decide I really need to go in and see you?
Once you are thinking about it. Because we offer free educational workshops, usually once a month around the coast. And so it gives people a chance to come in and just listen. It's an educational thing. There's no sales pitch. You can't become a client that day. When I created this model, one of the things I said was no one gets to be a client day one. They have to come and listen, then go reflect and think about it and decide, yes, this is something I need to learn more about. And so it starts with education. And so one of our ways to do that is to hold the workshops. And it's not a seminar. I'm not going to stand up and talk for an hour and a half to 2 hours. It is interactive. It is questions. Bring your questions. I encourage the interaction because what you're sitting there thinking about in that workshop, there's probably 3 or 4 other people in the room thinking the same thing. They may not know how to articulate it, or they're not sure they want to speak in front of everyone else.
Which brings to mind for me, what are the most common 3 questions that you get at these workshops?
What happens if one of us gets sick? What do we do? Who do we call? Where should we go? Those, the what happens if question. What do I need? And then probably is what will Medicaid let me keep if I get to the point where I have to rely on Medicaid? And so just briefly to address, I'm often asked, if I only needed one thing, what would that one piece of estate planning be? And I tell people, do you want it while you're alive or while you're dead? Well, you care about while you're alive.
Sure.
So I tell people it's powers of attorney. What powers of attorney do are allow an agent you've appointed to have the ability to do things for you with the same legal effect as if you did it yourself. And so you want to be the one appointing this person. And you need to make sure there are instructions in there. Here, I've given you all these powers. Now here's what I want you to do with them. Here's how I want you to use them to take care of me.
Okay, well, I'm thinking of me as an example. I'm almost 63. I don't have a specific legal document prepared with my wife that she is my power of attorney. My assumption would be she gets that automatically. True?
No, false. Many people think that. They think, well, we're married. Doesn't she get to sign for me? There's nothing in the Mississippi statute that allows a spouse to sign for another spouse. There's nothing in statute or in the law that says this person automatically gets to do those things. And if she showed up to a bank as your wife, that her name is not on that account, or to certain banks where you're the primary and she's just a secondary, she's limited in what she can do. So it's not an automatic, well, we're married, that gives us, no, it doesn't. So that's why powers of attorney are the most important, because if the power of attorney is structured properly, if the power of attorney has the right language in it, if it has Medicaid planning language, etc., we can do the planning necessary. We're under crisis mode,
Sure.
so there's a little more deadline to it, a little more emergency to it because you didn't plan the other parts of it, but we at least have something to work with. If not, our only recourse is to go to court, and under the Mississippi statutes, there's no Medicaid planning, so the judges don't have anything to allow us to do the planning that's necessary in most instances. So it can be a really rocky road for some families who didn't at least put powers of attorney in place.
Well, like most or many other families, I'm sure, we have kids as well. So the kids are now, both of them are over 18, and I'm thinking about passing along assets to them. There are probably certain things I have to do that I haven't done there either, correct?
Sure, and so many people think, okay, what if I just put beneficiary designations on things? What if I just add their name to the account? Okay, so you add your daughter's name to your account, and then she's in a car accident and the insurance company says, we're not paying, it was her fault. But that account with your name on it and her name on it doesn't mean they'll get it, but her name's on it. So guess what gets pulled into her lawsuit? Guess whose stress level goes up because of that? Again, it's not a definitive thing that they're going to take all of your money away, but what does she have access to?
Wow. So now,
What if what if she didn't, but her and her husband are building a business, or she's building a business, and the business fails, and she has to declare bankruptcy? Well, the bankruptcy court's going to say, oh, your name's on this account. So the creditors are going to want part of your money.
so it seems like each case is so individual and different that that's why you need to talk to people and find out exactly what their circumstances are.
Yes, and that's where at the end of our workshop, at the educational workshop, we offer people an opportunity to see what their particular situation is. What is it that they're concerned about? And we can't cover that in a public forum.
Sure.
So if someone were to call, there's a fee that we charge to come sit down with us. Mm-hmm. And in those meetings, I talk with them about specifics to their situation. What are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals? What are their objectives? At the end of that meeting, I'll quote them a fee. If it sounds like a good investment, we'll move forward. If it doesn't, we say good day. They pay their consult and they go on their way, but they've got the information. If they've went to a workshop and they stay till the end, and they fill out an evaluation form, tells me how I did. On that evaluation form, it says, yes, I'd like to learn more. I'd like to have a consultation. If they do those, then we waive the consultation fee. So currently our consultation fee is $350.
Okay.
And it gets you an hour.
Got it.
We sit down, we go over. If they've gone to the workshop, I don't have to cover those things at the workshop in that meeting.
Sure.
So it's a more effective meeting. And so we have families that will come from financial advisors or CPAs who I have relationships with. They will send them to a workshop. They're not sending them to see me. They're sending them to a workshop because that's where the information is. And then once they're at the workshop, if they gather the information and say, okay, look, yeah, I do need to see more about this, then they can come for the consultation. And it, free is free.
So in many cases where people are engaging a law firm, they're not speaking to the partner, they're speaking to an associate. In your case, that's untrue.
At one point, there were up to 10 staff, 2 attorneys, multiple offices, and I didn't like things very much. I wasn't having, as much time with my family as I wanted. I'm the only attorney in the firm right now. The way I've always done it, even when I had the other. If you see me speak, when you come in and sit down, you're going to meet with me. As we grow the firm again, if we choose to do that and I hire another associate, they would see that associate if they saw that associate speak. That way, that's the person they talk to. So when that person make references to their workshop, they'll know exactly what that is.
Right, and naturally, that individual, if he or she was working for you as an associate, you would be reviewing all those documents as well.
I'm responsible for all the staff. So all of our team, I have taken over the training for to make sure they are well trained. And, we really focus on our core values at the firm. Our mission is to help seniors and those with disabilities and their families navigate the second half of life. But our core values are, responsive, knowledgeable, and so we want to be responsive to our clients' needs. We have to be knowledgeable in what we're doing. So my team knows each member's responsibility. So if one team member is out, they can kind of fill in till that person comes back. Because most of the time, clients just want an answer. They want to know, yes, you haven't forgotten about me. It's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard anything, but you haven't forgotten.
Right.
And so, which leads to our third core value, which is caring. We want families to know we do care. So it's not just some big, law firm with hundreds of staff, and no, we have a team. And so each team member gets training, constant training. And sometimes I'm the one providing the training. Sometimes I've gotten training from someone else. I've reviewed it already, and yes, it meets with, and I provide that to the team. And the clients learn our team and who's responsible for what. So they know I'm not answering the phone. That's
right.
not a,
sure.
They want an answer to their question. Yeah. So when they call, this is the staff person that they've been working with, this is who they ask for. And then that staff person is responsible for getting back to them. And so that's part of me putting my staff in the proper position to be as successful as possible. Because if they constantly feel like they have egg on their face, then they're not going to be, and that goes against our core values. So we're trying to put all of that together for each client that we serve. And so then, and we take surveys from our clients. What did we do well? What can we improve on? And over the past 12, 15 years, we've made changes to what we do based on feedback from clients. I've changed my workshop based on feedback from people who attended.
How is it different now?
Well, when I started, I didn't have to have a slide about turn your electronic devices off. Oh. When I started, we weren't really in tune with a lot of the financial products that are out there because they were really the basics, long-term care insurance policies. And so there's a lot of different products now on the market that can help families. There are a lot of different techniques that we use now that just weren't available then. And so we've adjusted it based on that. There are some places we don't hold our workshops anymore because of feedback. It was uncomfortable chairs, or it was too loud, or too many outside interferences. We had one place, the roof started leaking right in the middle of it. So of course we don't use that one anymore.
Speaking of long-term care insurance, there's been a lot of discussion within the last few months about things that people should or shouldn't have done. Tell us a little bit more about long-term care insurance and whether or not it's still a good investment, or those who have it, or those who don't, what should they do?
Sure. The answer to that question, it reminds me of a thing. Before I went to law school, when someone would ask me a legal question, the answer was, I don't know, I'm not an attorney. So after all of law school and the brainwashing to get past the bar and all of that, that's the answer. So now someone asks a legal question and the answer is, it depends. Long-term care insurance, if you've seen one policy, you've seen one policy. what they provide, how they provide. Do they provide home care? Do they provide assisted living? Do they provide nursing home or some variation of? Is there a capped amount? Is it lifetime? And then one of the bigger issues that the industry has addressed is what happens if you don't use the policy? So you get a policy when you're 45 and you pay for it, and let's say you die at 90. Okay, so you paid for 55 years for a policy, if my math's right, 44 years.
40, yeah.
Then what happens?
Is
Where
there
did all
cash
those
value?
policies go? There's no cash value. There's nothing to come back. And so I co-wrote a book with a guy out of St. Charles named Don, and it's Don't Go Broke in a Nursing Home. And so with that, we review these things, but all of them are underwritten. And so if you're 86, there's not a lot of no one's going to write you a policy. But if you're 65 or 76 and you're in good health, even if there's a history of dementia or Alzheimer's in your family, you may get underwritten based on your particular situation. And that's the industry in general. So it really is a sit down and take a look at your specific situation to see, is there something that can qualify for you? We've had families buy products, financial services products, for long-term care. That's not just a traditional long-term care policy. It would provide a death benefit if they never used it. They could get their money back if they changed their mind in 2 years and said, look, I put $50,000 into this plan and it's in there 2 years. Well, things have changed and I just want my money back. Okay. And the companies that we have worked with allow for that to happen.
So you may be in a position after the fact, if I have a policy in place and I come to see you, maybe after a workshop, you may suggest that I pull that policy back, do various things. It's an individual case-by-case thing, isn't it?
It is a case-by-case thing. I'm usually not in the business of telling someone you need to get rid of this. I'm often asked,
Right.
What do you think of this policy? And the one question I ask them back is, what do you think the policy says? What do you think the policy does?
And chances are they have no idea.
They either don't know or what they think it does isn't what the policy actually says. And so we can help them get it reviewed. Many times I work with lots of financial advisors. And so many times it's, who did you buy the policy from? Well, that person's not here anymore. They retired. Okay, who has your other money? Or they don't have. So we refer them to one of the advisors that I have confidence in. We'll do a good job. Our core values of the firms kind of, our mantras, if you will, really coincide. And so I trust them to send this person to them. Even if they're not doing legal work for me, I will send them to have it reviewed, because if that's their biggest concern, they can't worry about the kids fighting or what happens to my other things if they don't know what the policies that they have or the assets that they have, how they are. And so if you don't have a retirement plan and you don't have annuities and you don't have anything but, $120,000 in liquid assets and your house, but you've got this long-term care policy you got from DuPont in the 60s, but you don't know what it does, we can't really have an in-depth conversation about what we can do for you and what the best tools from the estate planning toolbox to pull for you are until you understand fully what you have.
So now, clearly you're not the only attorney in the state that does this. Why should I select you as opposed to all my other choices?
We are one of the few in the entire state that focus solely on elder law issues. We are not what we call threshold lawyers. And that's not a bad thing. Some attorneys decide to do lots of things. So they want to be everything to everyone. Mm-hmm. And we don't. That's not who I am as a person. That's not who my team are. So if someone calls our office and it's something we don't do or we can't do, we know who does do those things. And so we'll refer them out. And so when they call and say, oh, well, I had to answer so many questions, that's to help us help you.
Sure.
What is it you're looking to accomplish? What is it you're looking to do? And then we can put you in the right place with the right people to help you, even if it's not us.
So it sounds like I'm dealing with a specialist rather than a generalist, just like if I went to my GP with a heart problem, I should be going to a cardiologist.
We don't use the term specialist. There are some various issues with that. I don't have any special identifiers. I'm an attorney. I have just focused my practice on these areas. And so, that's what we tell families, is that this is what we focus on. This is where our attention is. We could do probates. We could do Social Security claims. We could do lots of things. But our focus is on estate planning, asset protection, life care planning, Medicaid planning, those kind of things. And those really, to be honest, have a full client base for us to help.
Okay, well, give me maybe one or two really good examples of people who have come into the office, and you've saved them a lot of money or a lot of headache. I'd like to hear some examples.
Sure. We had a family come to see us. They were approximately $50,000 over-resourced for Medicaid. And he was really concerned, how was that going to work? His wife had dementia, and he had taken care of her at home for about 6 years. And so what was he going to do now? He couldn't take care of her at home anymore. She had fallen. She kept falling. He was really worried it was going to break something or do things. And so we helped him come to the realization that even bringing in home care wasn't going to address his issues. So he decided he was going to place her in a nursing home, but he didn't have the thousands and thousands of dollars a month to do that. So we took a look and we said, okay, what can we do? And so we created a plan that put that $50,000 from a countable asset to an exempt asset.
Okay.
So Medicaid has things and they say, this is countable, we count this, we add these things up. If it's more than the limit, you're over. And what they tell families is go spend down. That's their term, spend down. Well, how you spend down is just as important as what the amount is. If you have a $200,000 spend down, that's a slightly different thing than 50, for example, or 5. So in his case, he had always wanted a recliner, and his wife would never let him get one. So I said, go buy the recliner. They had aluminum windows in the house. He loved the house, he wanted to stay there, but the aluminum windows, his light bill was over $300 a month. And he wanted, well, could I replace the windows? Sure, that's allowed. Go replace them. The month after he replaced them, his light bill in the summer in South Mississippi went down to less than $100. So for him, what did that do? That increased his monthly allocation each month that he got to have for himself. And he had gotten these things that he always wanted. He wanted that recliner. He wanted. And so then the rest, we restructured to make it exempt. And so in his case, we created a monthly income stream for him with that, using a product that Medicaid says is exempt. Now, I don't know if that would still be valid or available to, depending on the situation. But that's one example where a relatively small amount, $50,000, was what stood in the way of Medicaid helping him. Now, his wife still had a copay to the nursing home, but he got to keep that overage. It just had to be restructured so that Medicaid would say, okay, we don't get to count it.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example where he would not probably have been able to figure this out himself. This is not something he could do on his own with internet research, right? Right.
He would have to learn the Medicaid policy and interpret it properly and do that. And so we were able to help walk him through that elder care continuum to get him to eligibility for his wife without spending all $50,000. Because ultimately, that's what most people think. Well, I just have to spend $50,000. But if they spend it improperly, they do that. The second example I would give you is a family that was going to have an 18-month penalty for some things. People had been added to deeds, cars had been given away, etc. And one of the things was that when the husband went to the nursing home for rehabilitative care, the wife took and gave $50,000 to the building fund at their church.
Okay.
Which is a gift.
Right.
So one of the things we were able to do was we contacted the church, and they were like, oh my gosh, yes, no, give it back. So they were able to give it back. Well, that wiped it away. That she didn't need to do that to get him eligible. But from what she had been told by friends and neighbors, was that this is what she needed to do. So when I mentioned earlier, we probably spend 40% of our time undoing what people have done. This was an example, undoing it. With the deeds, we got them all transferred back. So we took an 18-month penalty and got it down to 4 months.
Wow.
And so then for those 4 months, the family had to privately pay. But here's the thing that helped as well. One of those months, Medicare paid because he was on rehab.
So it wasn't really 4 months, it was 3 months.
By timing everything properly, Medicaid said there was a 4-month penalty, but the family's responsibility was just 3 months of out-of-pocket.
Got it.
So we took what would have been 18 months, which would have been roughly $150,000, and got it down to 3 months.
So it sounds like in most cases, now clearly then you have to charge for your services, but when we look at the amount of dollars that we have to pay you as a law firm versus the amount of money we have in return, it's clearly a tremendous value.
We think so. It's why I get to sleep at night. But what we tell families is you always have options. The only time you're out of options is when you're out of money. That's when you are completely at everyone else's beck and call. So what we tell them is find out. And that's why we do the educational workshops. I talk about these things. I talk about estate planning. I talk about probate and conservatorships. We go into Medicaid and we work through some case studies of what happens if one of you gets sick, what happens when one of you dies, when both of you die, if Medicaid's involved, those kind of things. And so it's an educational thing to bring them into my world as an elder law attorney so that they can see value or can stop making the same mistakes that the people before them have made that we spend all of our time correcting. But I do suggest that they not apply for Medicaid until they know they're going to be eligible.
So my question is, at this point, who shouldn't come to one of these workshops?
If you already know everything, if you know how things are going to be, if you have no interest in providing for the family once you're gone, whether that's death, dementia, disability, incapacity, incompetency, if you are certain everything is the way that you want it, then there's no reason to come. And we have had families come in and bring their parent, and the parent says, I don't care about probate, that's your problem. And we end the meeting and say, okay, we're done. And the kids are like, no, wait, can't you? No, he's right, it's your problem. And until he's ready to help you with that problem, there's nothing we can do. And so for those instances, they shouldn't. They can go to our website, which is southmselderlaw.com. southmselderlaw.com. It's for South Mississippi Elder Law. Mm-hmm. And we have a tab on there for our workshop so they can see when both publicly and privately. So there are times that we will talk to a church group or talk to a senior club. And so those are on there as well.
So what else haven't we discussed that we should at this point?
I think one of the biggest issues that we're seeing right now is Alzheimer's and dementia really coming to the forefront. The stigma of talking about it is starting to diminish a little. Mm-hmm. This past year, we released 2 books, Living with Alzheimer's as a Caregiver and Living with Alzheimer's Recently Diagnosed. And they're both called You Are Not Alone. Mm-hmm. And what we have seen in the research that we've done is really led to us being one of the founding members of a national thing. It's the N3AP, which is the National Association of Attorneys for Alzheimer's Planning. It's a mouthful. Right, N3AP. But it's for us to go and help other attorneys learn to recognize these things, to have their conversations with their clients about dementia and Alzheimer's and even Parkinson's. But the books are focused on Alzheimer's and dementia and how, as a caregiver for taking care of someone with Alzheimer's, the care starts at home. It starts many times before there's a diagnosis. We're just, well, grandma's starting to get forgetful, or, why did mom put the keys in the fridge? something those trope, things, but it could be even lesser things of we're checking in on mom. Slowly it becomes monthly, then it's weekly, then it's daily. What are the things that keep the caregiver from being so overwhelmed and so frustrated?
If you could then explain the N3AP so I understand exactly who they are and what they do.
Sure. It's the National Association of Attorneys for Alzheimer's Planning, and we're a 501c3. And our purpose is to go around and help attorneys identify families and their clients and have those conversations about Alzheimer's and dementia with them, and even possibly Parkinson's. But the focus of our book is about Alzheimer's, the caregiver and the person with the diagnoses. And it's to help the caregivers deal with the stress of being a caregiver, to recognize there are special indicators, there are special techniques that really have been proven to be helpful in dealing with a loved one who has dementia or Alzheimer's and the constant stress. And if you're completely stressed out and you're not taking care of yourself, you really aren't giving the best care you can for your loved one. And so what happens at each step of that process, there are different types of dementia, there are different types of Alzheimer's. And so what really comes into play with those and as caregivers, and so that's where our focus has been the last year or so, is really as people are having these conversations with their clients, and we're training them and training caregivers on techniques to use, that we're seeing some improvement in the level of care for those seniors.
What do you think of these new DNA tests that will predict whether or not I will get X or Y disease or condition?
For me, I'm waiting for more. I'm not certain that everything is developed as it could be right now. I think it is interesting, and if there is a history, then we have seen that families with a history of dementia or Alzheimer's, then the subsequent ones, it's like any other medical condition. So if you have a history of cancer in your family,
Sure.
you know to be on the lookout for that. If you have high blood pressure in your family, to monitor that, high cholesterol, etc. And so I think it's the same as we are seeing families deal with dementia and Alzheimer's. And my youngest client who was diagnosed with dementia was in his 40s, and he passed before 50. His father had passed at 49. So we see that family dynamic really play out. If they can, then it could be a game changer. But right now, as far as the latest that I've seen, the only definitive test is done in the autopsy, and that's not many people want to sign up for that one, right?
Dennie, thanks for being my guest.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Thank you.